Hello everyone, Jackson Borges here from All Saints Church in Rehoboth Beach with this week's stay-at-home recital. Very happy that you could join us today. We begin with the music of George Friedrich Handel. If you are like me and you usually can't get through a Christmas or an Easter season without listening to or playing something or performing in a performance of Messiah, then this is for you. Many of us did not get to do our traditional Easter this year, and here at All Saints, we always sing the Hallelujah Chorus from Handel's Messiah for Easter. So, if you are a singer, if you have your Messiah score nearby, if you have it memorized, or if you don't have any of that, just keep singing Hallelujah until the organ stops. So this is for all of my friends in the service of the church and everyone else who loves Handel's Messiah. This is the Hallelujah Chorus. sure you were all singing with great gusto then. Wonderful piece of music and a great tradition to have. So we move from Handel now to contemporary America with the music of Dr. Dan Locklear. Dan Locklear really became kind of a household name, in the organ world at least, when he wrote and published his suite of pieces entitled Rubrics, a liturgical suite for organ. Now, if you don't know what a rubric is, it's just a fancy term that we in the service of the church use for the rules and regulations of what to do, how to do it, and where and when to do it. That is what a rubric is. It's a rule of the denomination or the church. And one of the more popular movements from Dan Locklear's work, Rubrics, is the slow movement entitled The Peace May Be Exchanged. So I'd like to play that for you now, and especially I'd like to play it for my mom, who had a birthday this month, and for whom this is a favorite piece. Love you, Mom. Beautiful piece there. Now we move over again to more music of the church with a few hymn-based pieces. In fact, they are all hymns. The first one is by a dear friend of mine, the American composer Daniel Gothrop, who will certainly be familiar at least to choral singers, but I'm sure everyone, for his anthem entitled Sing Me to Heaven, which has been a perennial favorite among just about every choir around. Well, Dan is very prolific and very much active as a composer here in the United States, and I got a message from him last week, and he said, I just wrote this little piece of voluntary, if you will, on the hymn tune Stuttgart, which in the Episcopal hymnal is the tune to the hymn Come Thou Long Expected Jesus, the Advent hymn. And so Dan reached out to me and said, I have this voluntary on Stuttgart. I'd love to have you play it on your next recital. So here it is. This is the world premiere of Daniel E. Gothrop's setting of the hymn tune Stuttgart, also known as Come Thou Long Expected Jesus. Adorable little piece. Thank you to Dan Gothrop for sending me that and for granting me the honor and the pleasure of premiering it. So, if you want any more music on Daniel, if you want any more info on Daniel's music, visit him at dunstonhouse.com, which is his publishing company. So we continue on now with a couple more other hymns that have been suggested. This suggestion, this request, comes from a friend of mine, the Reverend Dr. Donna Fowler, down in North Carolina. She is a nut and an expert about Charles Wesley. So she requested one of Charles Wesley's most famous, most loved hymns, which is Love Divine, All Loves Excelling. we stay with one more hymn now, and thank you to Donna Fowler for requesting that wonderful hymn of faith. We move now to a little bit more of a heart-wrenching hymn. And it was written by the composer Horatio Spafford. Horatio Spafford's life was not without a lot of tragedy, beginning in 1871 when his young son's life ended in the Great Chicago Fire, and the Spafford family experienced severe economic downturn in 1873 as a result of that fire. Believing that he and his family needed a rest, they agreed to take a trip to England to reset themselves, and so Spafford sent his wife and 4 daughters ahead of him and decided to stay behind to close up some business items before he joined the family. And he put them on the ship, the SS Ville du Havre. And as the Ville du Havre crossed the Atlantic, it collided with another vessel, causing it to sink. His wife survived, making it to England, but his 4 children perished. His wife sent him a telegram with the very simple yet very sad message: saved alone. So Spafford turned to music, as we so often do in trying times, and he penned the words to the beautiful hymn, "It Is Well With My Soul." The first verse, and I encourage you to look up the verses and read the words, which are very, very beautiful. The first verse reads, "When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows flow, whatever my lot thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul." always was one of my favorite hymns. I do hope that you enjoyed that. So that brings us to the end of this week's program. I do hope that you've enjoyed the music that we brought to you today. I would be remiss if I did not thank my dedicated camerawoman, April City, who keeps this parish and all of us on the straight and narrow. So thank you to April. Thank you so much. We close now with a request for another hymn tune, but this time I'm going to play it in its original incarnation. The request came through to play the hymn tune Be Still My Soul, which is a beautiful hymn by itself, but it actually came from a larger piece of music. We talked about transcriptions last week. We played a transcription of a Vivaldi concerto, transcription being something written for another instrument and arranged to be played on another instrument. This week we are going to play the beautiful tone poem called Finlandia by Jean Sibelius. Sibelius was a Finnish composer, and if we were to think about what Finland might sound like in music, this is what Sibelius thought it would sound like. Sibelius was a very wonderful composer, in fact, one of the most famous sons of Finland. And the slow movement in the middle of the piece is what we now know as the hymn Be Still My Soul. Now, I mentioned this as a tone poem. A tone poem is a large scale, or could be a smaller scale, piece of music that has a program or a story behind it. This is a very fine example of a tone poem. This is the entire country of Finland put into music as Sibelius would have conceived it. So there are many other very famous tone poems, one of which is the Symphonie Fantastique of Hector Berlioz. Beautiful, beautiful piece of music. But we're going to stick with Finlandia today. Feel free to continue to send in all your requests. I really love getting them, and we've got quite a laundry list of things to work through, and we'll have a great time doing that. So thank you very much for tuning in this week. We will be recording from St. George's Chapel next week, and I look forward to having you join us then. Take care.